Welcome to Black Hat 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRisk TV studio in Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm your host, Jackie McGuire, and I'm joined today by Seemant Sehgal. He is the founder of BreachLock. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jackie.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about something that I think is probably going to trigger a lot of people who work in SOCs today. It's something that I complain about pretty often, which is alert fatigue, and the fact that we've all got 10,000 untriaged alerts in our SIM, and a decent chunk of those say that they're critical based on how we have or have not set up our SIM. So is this something that you see a lot?
Yeah, I do see a lot, and of course I come from a financial background, right?
Yeah.
Before I started BreachLock, I was heading the cybersecurity assessment wing for ING Bank in Europe.
And finance is crazy, right? Because you have, not only is it the crown jewels or actual money, but it's 24 hours. Like banks run 24 hours, so you can't just shut the network down to upgrade
Absolutely.
something.
And the adversaries are following the sun, so you have to too, right? There's no option to put your guard down. And, I've always been a big fan of both offense and defense. And that's also what I promoted at the bank. I think people get too much focused on the defense, and that's where the alert fatigue comes from. Not that that's bad, but by the end of the day, you don't want to have like a needle in a haystack problem and then blame your analysts that they didn't find something there. So I think it's also a proactive approach that helps, and that's something that I've promoted. And that's why these days I like to talk about vulnerability fatigue and not just alert fatigue.
Yeah. So what was really the onus that caused you to say, I need to start a company to solve this problem?
Right, pretty much the same, right? So when I looked at the investments that the corporates were making, I was buying a lot. I was in the buyer's shoes, reporting directly into the group CISO. So I was part of the CISO's office. All country CISOs were my peers. So I was, having a say in the budget and what they buy. I was doing a lot of proof of values for the bank and kind of putting my stamp, hey, this is ready to go. We can deploy it. So it all boiled down to too much focus on defense, like I said, and not the proactive side of security, meaning we don't want to wait for an incident to happen to tell us what's broken. Why don't we have a look and find out proactively what's broken so that we can fix it? And, that led me to believe that there's more innovation that needs to be done in offensive security. And, that's what BreachLock's all about. We're probably the most complete offensive security solution that's available on the market today.
Yeah, and so you have the technique that you use is adversarial exposure validation, right? So how does this work? So I've got all of these alerts in front of me. How does this help me figure out which ones actually matter?
Right. So that's it. It's about fixing what matters, right? So in the bank, I learned that there's like a ton of vulnerabilities. We used to get PowerPoint decks, red, yellow, green, and nothing really moved each month. And when we did a red team, which was more an ecosystem hack than a vulnerability view of the world, meaning you focus on people, process, technology, and go from there, it showed a complete different picture that a lot could be breached, where you could have like 3 critical vulnerabilities sitting for 3 months and nobody gave a damn about it. Right?
Well, we also see that companies will do, a pen test or a red team or something like that, but then they haven't allocated the resources to resolve whatever comes up from that.
Absolutely.
From that test. And
You're absolutely right, Jackie. And the reason I think for that is that, again, the fatigue side of things, right? Because you get a report with a ton of vulnerabilities. So what we've done with this new product, it's an agentic solution. So it's built off generative AI. A lot is happening in that space, as you know, so we are on the forefront of that from an offensive security perspective. And what we really do there is we kind of, put all the vulnerability intelligence. First, we find it very fast, thanks to Gen AI now, with all the feeds that we can corroborate. We've very beautifully crafted an agentic solution that writes checks for CVEs as they're published, and this is huge. So, with the vulnerability scanning world, you are usually seeing the top players competing. Hey, I released this check in 24 hours, 48 hours. So we are doing it near real time now. Again, because of the generative AI innovation that's happening all around us. And from there, when we get the vulnerabilities, we stack them all up from an attacker's perspective and sort of give you an attack tree view, right? Or a kill chain view.
So if I'm an attacker, here's what what the actual realistic 2 or 3 kill chains would look like that I could use in this
Absolutely.
environment.
This is how I would get to the crown jewel, right? And once you see that in action and you either see a green or a red being, it's a red flag, like, yeah, somebody can get to my crown jewel, be it an Active Directory or be it, a Drupal or whatever, simplest thing possible, but it still gives the attacker a foothold on your internal infrastructure. Then it starts to move, because then the remediators start to get more excited about, hey, so now that I am able to visualize this skill chain, which of the steps or vulnerabilities or CVEs or CWEs do I need to patch to break the whole kill chain, right? So you get a two-way motivation, one from the management, because of course they're worried that something wrong can happen, and also the system administrators or the DevOps engineers get much more excited that they could actually patch something that works. And if you give them a laundry list of vulnerabilities that they need to fix, then of course there's many bottlenecks and they don't get the approvals with the DTAP. So it's not only the admins to blame, it's also the state of the technology we have. You can't just throw patches at systems, because you need to have business to be able to live the security side of it, right? So I know, coming from a bank, you have to follow the DTAP cycles. You can't just patch left, right, and center. And whenever we had the critical, we get the bypasses for all of that, and rightly so, right? So I think with the AEV concept, you're able to see the kill chain in action. So you know exactly which vulnerability matters, and then you fix that. So fix what matters.
Yeah. Well, and I also, I talk to CISOs a lot, and they have a really hard time kind of talking to their executive peers about what they're doing, about why it matters, about the potential fallout. So I imagine when you can take, because generally it's this trade-off between, well, we have CyberRisk insurance and the chance of a breach is this percent. The cost of the breach is, $10 million. And if there's only a 15% chance, it's less money to, And I think with this, if you can say, no, there is a demonstrable path to critically sensitive information that we have to close, it's not theoretical risk,
no,
then, right?
Not.
It's real world risk that has to be addressed, and that you can actually tie to enterprise value or enterprise risk. Because I always say, as a CISO, if you go in and you say, all right, CEO, we have operational risk, they're like, I don't care. Like, well, this operational risk translates to potentially losing $5 million a day in revenue if we're crippled. Then they start to care.
Absolutely.
Right?
And you can tie that to the crown jewel. That's why the flags are really important. So in a AEV concept, you start from objectives, and then you go to the final crown jewel, right? So the AI is able to come up with the context of the target, right? So let's say if I enter a target, abcbank.com, then the AI already knows that this is a bank. So the first step is to look at the threat intel that's relevant to that sector, and then pick the objectives based on that, and that's how the whole attack is done. And it's completely with human out of the chain. And I'm not a propagator of pen testing or red teaming needs to be done fully automated. So I'm not saying that. However, what we've seen is with this product that we've launched, we've got a lot of traction with internal teams. So the right way to put this is for enterprise internal offensive security teams. They see this as a mechanism to scale their own efforts, so they can probably focus on fixing stuff, and then the machines can find most of the things at scale.
Yeah, I think you're always going to need a human for pen testing, because you have 95% of it is known variables and things like that. But in security, shout out my couple friends who got caught in a fire escape stairwell trying to sneak into a party a couple days ago. In security, we tend to be a little bit mischievous, and we tend to be able to find the very indirect paths into things. So because adversaries, yes, they are using a lot of automation, but they also still have humans kind of actively trying to find the sneaky things. So, but to your point, if there are known variables that you can address, that frees up your team for more time for the actual fun stuff. Because those are the fun red teaming activities, right?
And I get into this discussion all the time, because at BreachLock we do both. So we have the human-led part that uses technology in-house. So that's more for enterprises that want to have an external pair of eyes looking at their infrastructure, at their applications, whether it's for compliance reasons or just an extra pair of eyes, independent view. But we also have these platform or tools that are used by internal teams. So we do both. So I get this question very often, can it be really automated? And I always respond by saying it's not an either or.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not like, either you would have automated or you need humans. It's both.
Yeah.
And we need to stop this discussion and just focus on the scalability benefits of the technology and just end it with saying like, no, humans will be in the loop
Yeah.
and they need to be in the loop because that's what the business demands. And, that's the same option available, right? You can't just let it on machines to...
It's not microwave or stove. Sometimes you need both, right?
That's a good way to put
Some
it.
things don't go in the microwave.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So is there a typical profile for a customer? Are you generally mid-market? Are you larger enterprises? Does it kind of span the spectrum? Like, what does your typical customer look like?
So it's all the way from Fortune 500 to mid-enterprise clients, mostly software, financial, healthcare. These are the three sectors
Critical.
that we... like you would imagine. We also have like critical sectors like energy and some of the biggest companies, manufacturing. I can name it. Like pen testing is everybody's problem, right? You have to know where you
ICS is one of my favorite areas. Like I always like the Target breach that happened through their air conditioning control system.
That's one of my favorite ones also.
I used to own my husband owned a mechanical contractor, and he's a mechanical engineer, and so I ended up having to learn how to write the industrial automation. So when the Target breach happened, I was like, I know BACnet, I know these controls.
Yeah, and to your point, a lot of OT clients also reach out to us, and rightly so. So I really love the fact that the awareness is rising. Also, that they want to do it more continuous and not just like a once a year thing.
Not just check the box.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where technology can help, right? Because then you can have humans do, let's say, a couple of times a year or quarterly if you have the budget. And for the rest, why leave it out? Just test it with, the existing parameters. And I think generative AI is really pushing the bar there, right? Because it's a self-learning mechanism, and the more you teach it, the more it performs better, right? So that's...
Does that cause... So I think I've noticed a real sentiment change from last year to this year with security teams, and that last year it was like, block everything, we can't let this in. And this year it's like, all right, I keep saying this, the horse is out of the barn. Like, we're not going to put these horses back in the barn. Let's just figure out how to contain the fallout. So I imagine you get at least some pushback from CISOs around using AI, because with agents, with people, there's at least some delay in communication, and then there's somebody to fire if things go sideways. Like, who do you fire if an agent does things instantaneously that are really bad? So how do you address those concerns? Like, what are you hearing with regard to AI concerns from CISOs, and how do you address those?
Very, very relevant question. So I'm glad you asked that, Jackie. So I'll address two sides of it, right? So first, let's talk about BreachLock, and then we'll talk about the industry. Because I'm a practitioner, right? So I have to give you that answer. So from BreachLock perspective, obviously we saw that coming, right? And what we built is we've built an AI transparency module. Now, I'm not saying that's the answer to all the questions we have with AI autonomy, but it's a start, right?
Yeah.
So exactly, you create the transparency for the CISO, and you're able to see, like, for example, we have like 18 agents. Then they're able to see what each agent is doing, what data it's picking. We only take the metadata and share it with AI, so it's not your infrastructure or your application info going, because, I mean, the AI doesn't need to know that. It just needs to know what the target is, and it doesn't need to know who the target is, right? Yeah. So you just take the metadata, and that's how it's processed. So we show, just like in a proxy vulnerability testing tool, you would see the get request, the post request. Similarly, whatever is going to the AI and coming back from the AI and the commands that we are injecting, like you said, with the agents interacting with each other, they're able to see everything. So that's one, transparency. Second is that just like in a Tesla, especially with auto-driving cars, in Europe, we have norms where the driver has to keep the hands on the steering, otherwise my beamer starts to beep. Right? So similarly, we have an assisted mode in our solution, which means that you can switch it on with a toggle button. So if it's a very risky test or a risky environment, then it'll ask you at each step. Right? And of course, it not ask you I'm going to run an Nmap scan, or I'm going to do XYZ. That's the normal, if you're worried about that, you've got other problems. If systems would break because of a port scan, then you have other problems. But more for the high risk actions like launching an exploit, or even, establishing a connection, even if it's passive, right? It would ask you. And then if you approve as a human, it goes further. If not, you choose what you do.
So I want to paraphrase this, because I think this is important. You said one is start with metadata. So one, I think, is privacy. So start by only collecting the actual data you need to do the work. 2 is transparency. And then 3, it sounds like control.
Yeah.
So give people the control they need to make decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the BreachLock side of things, right? Now my practitioner answer. So look, I've seen the movie before many times. I've heard all the buzzwords, seen the technology revolutions. The last one that I can draw a reference with, and I'm sure you would agree, is cloud, right? Yeah. So when I was at the bank, I mean, we were having discussions like, hey, should we build a private cloud? Should we stay in the data center? Look where we are now. Like I was speaking to a client that's in a defense setting, right? And we were discussing like, okay, on-prem solution. In the 10 minutes later in the conversation, it turned out they were in a multi-cloud environment. So that's how we refer to on-prem these days in a defense setting, right?
Yeah.
So I think similar things are going to happen with AI. It's totally fine. We're all discussing where the data is going. My prediction is like 5 years from now, or maybe even sooner, we're all going to just adapt and accept, for the right reason, not for the wrong reasons, a multi-model setup where 3 or 4 big players, just like you have now with AWS, GCP, and Azure, would be kind of the trusted partners for any large corporate to deal with, and all the SOC 2, ISO 27001, the data security standards would all be in place, and we would all have calmed down our emotions and be okay with it. The only thing that I don't have an answer to, I'm still looking for that, is that the autonomy angle for the AI when it kind of crosses the guardrails.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that. I think nobody does.
Well, you'll be a billionaire when you figure it out. So.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, from BreachLock perspective, I have to find the answers for my clients. I'm still looking for that. Yeah. Well,
we're going to bring you back in 2030 because you said 5 years from now we'll have you on again, and we'll replay this before your interview, and we'll see if you were right.
You bet.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. I could probably talk to you for about an hour about this, Seemant. So thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the good conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. And if you'd like to find out more about BreachLock, please visit securityweekly.com/BreachLockBH. And for the rest of our coverage, you can visit securityweekly.com/Black Hat. I'm Jackie McGuire. We are in the Mandalay Bay at Black Hat 2025 in Las Vegas, Nevada. And we will be right back with lots more guests and great segments. Stay tuned.